This material consists of excerpts from diaries, letters and memoirs of German soldiers, officers and generals who first encountered the Russian people during the Great Patriotic War of 1941-1945. As Lieutenant Brand said, the Germans are unlikely to emerge victorious from the struggle against the Russian land and against Russian nature. So many women still give birth despite the depredations of war, despite the destruction and death. Here we are fighting not against people, but against the very nature itself. At the same time, I again have to admit to myself that this country is becoming dearer to me every day. Russians are so versatile that almost each of them comprises the full range of human qualities. Among them you can find everything from a cruel brute to Saint Francis. That is why they cannot be described in a few words. To describe Russians, one must use all the existing epithets. I can say about them that I like them, I don't like them, I bow before them, I hate them, they touch me, they scare me, I admire them, they disgust me. The inexplicability of the Russian character and behavior often baffled the Germans. Russians show hospitality not only in their homes, they go out to meet their guests with milk and bread. In December 1941, during the retreat from Borisov in a village abandoned by the Soviet troops, an old woman brought out some bread and a jug of milk to German soldiers. Major Kuna wrote, "Russian peasants are peace-loving and good-natured. When we feel thirsty during the crossings, we go into their huts and they give us milk as if we were pilgrims. For them, every person is in need. How often have I seen Russian peasant women wailing over wounded German soldiers as if they were their own sons? Such a character infuriates a less thoughtful person and makes them exclaim, 'Chaotic, incomprehensible people.' They think differently and don't even bother. You'll never understand Russians anyway," said Officer Malapar. And a soldier named Matis says, "Stalin is the ruler of Asian boundlessness. This is an enemy that the forces advancing from limited, dissected spaces cannot cope with. We entered into battle with something we did not understand at all. Our strategy is, strictly speaking, completely random, like an adventure on Mars." Hatred, holding grudges are not in the Russian character. This is especially clear due to how quickly the psychosis of hatred in ordinary Soviet people towards the Germans disappeared after the Second World War. At the same time, sympathy, the maternal feeling of Russian rural women, as well as young girls in relation to the prisoners, all played a significant part. A Western European woman who met with the Red Army in Hungary is surprised. Isn't it strange that most of them do not feel any hatred even for the Germans? Where do they get this unshakable faith in human goodness, this inexhaustible patience, this selflessness and meek humility? An example of the duality of the Russian soul, which combines pity and cruelty at the same time, was described by Marta Gerdner. When the prisoners were already given soup and bread in the camp, one Russian gave us some bread. Others did the same, and we had so much bread that we could not eat it. We just shook our heads. Who can understand these people? They can shoot someone while laughing contemptuously at them, and then they give plenty of soup and share their own daily rations of bread. Looking closer at Russians, the German General Schweppenberg notes the sharp extremes and the inability to fully comprehend them. The Russian soul, it passes from the most gentle, soft sounds to wild fortissimo, and it is difficult to predict this music and especially the moments of its transition. The words of the old consul remain symbolic. "I don't know Russians well enough. I've only lived among them for 30 years. One prisoner of war named Golwitzer said, "The people, the glorified Russian people. For several years I carried out the issuance of wages in one work camp and came into contact with Russians from all walks of life. There are fine people among them, but it is almost impossible to remain an impeccably honest person here. I was constantly amazed that under such pressure, these people retained so much humanity in all respects and so much naturalness. In women, this is noticeably more than in men. In the old, of course, more than in the young, among the peasants, more than among the workers, but there is no stratum in which this is completely absent. They are wonderful people and deserve to be loved. And on the way home from Russian captivity, the impressions of the recent years emerge in the memory of a German soldier priest named Franz. A Russian can be harsh, and then he knows no limits, and yet he is extremely good-natured and able to share the last piece of bread. In this polarity of his character lies the mystery of the Russian man. These people are naturally healthy and whole. I learned first of all to appreciate them. And here are the words of a German soldier Mikkels about the dignity of a Russian woman. What did propaganda tell us about a Russian woman, and what did we see when we came there? I think that there is hardly a German soldier who has been in Russia who has not learned to appreciate and respect a Russian woman. The courage of Russians is based on their undemanding attitude to life, on their organic connection with nature. And this nature tells them about deprivation, struggle, and death to which any person can be subjected. General Gunther Blumentritt, Chief of Staff of the Fourth Army, said, "The behavior of the Russians, even in the first battle, was strikingly different from the behavior of the Poles and Allies who were defeated on the Western Front. Even when they were completely surrounded, the Russians defended their positions to the end." Wehrmacht anti-tank gunner said, "During the attack, we stumbled upon a light Russian T-26 tank. We immediately shot it from the 37mm gun. When we approached, the hatch of the tank suddenly opened, and a Russian soldier started shooting at us with his pistol. Later, we found out that he had lost his legs. They were torn off when the tank was hit, and despite this, he kept firing." From a letter from Corporal Bernhard, "We are in a rather difficult position. Russians, it turns out, also know how to wage war, and this was proved by the great chess move that they made in recent days, and they did it with the forces of not a regiment or division, but much larger." Joseph Goebbels said, "Courage is inspired by spirituality. The stubbornness with which the Bolsheviks defended themselves in their pillboxes in Sevastopol is akin to some kind of animal instinct, and it would be a deep mistake to consider it the result of Bolshevik convictions or upbringing. Russians have always been like that, and most likely will always remain so."